Welcome back. So, this week it's going to be a little bit of a different episode. I'm doing a solo episode. It's going to be a mini one, so it shouldn't be too long. And I'm going to talk about this concept that I call stretching. And stretching is something, it's not anything novel or new. I'm not like, creating something wildly original. But I look at stretching as not just for kids, but something we need as individuals. But I'm going to tie it into both life and parent teen scenarios. So to me, stretching is the concept of looking to see where we can push ourselves or our kids into areas where they feel slightly uneasy or slightly challenged. And why I call it stretching is because we've got to kind of push a little bit in these moments. And we want to stretch kids and we want to stretch ourselves. Because in doing so, in doing the stretch, that's where we start to build resilience. That's where we start to build and develop additional skills. And a lot of times when parents come to me with concerns about behavior or a child who might not be doing A, B, or C, or whatever the case is, I always kind of describe this idea as when we look at a behavior, the better question to think about is my child is demonstrating an undesired behavior. What is the skill that they don't have yet? So that this behavior then reduces in frequency or in intensity or whatever it might be. So, an example of this is if a child is always having a meltdown every time that you are having to tell them it's time to clean up or to transition from a really highly desired activity to a non-desired activity, then it's not that your child is quote unquote bad. It's not that your child is whining all the time or having a hard time every time they have to transition. It's that they're trying to develop the skill of tolerating what it means to go from something I really like doing to something I don't really like doing. Right? So that means frustration, that means anger sometimes, that means waiting, right? Sometimes we're put in a position now where we have to wait to do the thing that we want to do. So, whatever it is, there's always a skill underneath there that we need to learn so that we can start to see a reduction in that behavior. And I talk about this a lot on videos, but the way that we get kids to stop engaging in undesired behavior, the only way is through. So you might hear people kind of say different things like, oh, give them choices or do this or do that. And I mean, maybe that's effective. I don't know. But for me, if the aim is to really build resilience and to build a child's sense of confidence that they can manage and do a lot, stretching is going to be your best friend because it really says, okay, I can see that every time the outcome is not what they want, they really have a hard time. And if we think about how important it is to tolerate an outcome that is not our first choice, if you even just scanned your own day, you would see how many times you are able to adjust and do that. Now we start to build things in like flexibility. It improves social skills because we have to do that when we engage with other people. Sometimes I might want Mexican food for dinner, somebody else might want Italian, and we've got to compromise somewhere. So one of us isn't going to get the outcome that we want. But initially, ideally, it's like we are so happy about being together that that's not really what is the most important. So through experience and time and things of that sort, we get very good at being able to adjust and becoming flexible and accepting second choices and third choices and things of that sort. With kids, they need opportunities to do this, hence stretching. So we have to push them sometimes into spaces and places where that might feel a little uneasy. Now, again, the thing we want to note with kids is we want to really think about using scaffolding here. So scaffolding is in its simplest form, we're learning and understanding how to meet a child where they are. So I will give you an example of this from my therapy days. So as a speech and language pathologist, I worked with kids in a medical setting in a one-on-one capacity. So it was me and the child. And I worked with children who had a lot of there was complexity to their diagnoses. There were usually a lot of things layered into their speech and language goals, and often there were behavioral challenges, but those weren't the result of a kid who just didn't want to listen. Like I had to dig a little deeper and try to understand what that child was showing me. So let's say the child comes into therapy and I present them with a task and that task feels too hard. So for some kids, when something feels hard or not doable, their knee-jerk reaction will be to engage in an undesired behavior. Why? Because now it takes the focus off of the hard task. And now my attention is focused on don't throw that toy, come on back, we have to do the work, da da da. So now we're engaged in a completely different back and forth, but we're no longer really focused anymore on pushing the child to work on a task that feels hard. So I used to watch a lot of therapists in their sessions and I would coach them through it. And sometimes when this happens, a lot of therapists or teachers or parents, you sort of find yourself at an impasse because what you're saying to yourself is they're just not listening, they're not cooperating, they're refusing to come over to the table and work again, or they're refusing to sit and play and work on their goals. You're trying to redirect them, you're trying all these things, and essentially it's not working because what's really happening is this: your child perceives the task as too difficult. You are giving them a task that's too difficult in their world. And so as a result, they would much rather engage in a different behavior that distracts from the difficult task. So if we can shift the task and we can build some momentum and confidence and get them to work on the task in a more prompted way, and I'll talk about what that actually means, now we can start to see more success. So when we're thinking about scaffolding, let's say I think to myself, well, that task is really important, but I can see based on their behavior that that task also feels too hard. So my job is to meet the child where they're at and scaffold. So what I can do is maybe I present a couple of easy tasks to build some momentum, and then I mix in this more challenging task, but I do it in a more supported way. So maybe this time I present the task, but I make it an easier task for the child, or I guide them to the right answer so they don't feel like they're completely stranded, unable to do the task. And we do that for a few times so that child starts to practice what feels like it's too hard with a little more guided support. Then I start to fade my support to see, can the child demonstrate this more independently, and does this task feel doable to the child without them engaging in a behavior that we don't want them to engage in. So in that example, the scaffolding was the task was too hard for the child. The child stops engaging in the desired behavior, which is to work on the task, and instead they engage in things that we don't want them to do. I want to bring the child back to the task because I believe the child can do it, but I have to read their cues. I have to pay attention to what they're showing me. So I have to scaffold here. So I'm stretching the child now. So I am going to reintroduce the task, but I'm going to give them a little bit of help with the task. I'm not going to completely just leave it on them. And then I'm going to fade that help little by little. And now we scaffold, we pull back until that child can demonstrate some form of mastery on that task. So let's look at it through the lens of like at home. Let's say your child's struggling with a task, like zipping their coat. And let's say it's something that they're working on. And you think to yourself, well, I could just make this so much easier. And instead of dealing with a tantrum, I can just go zip the coat. Or I could say, hey, just ask me for help. Use your words. Say, I need help. And we believe that that's the reason they're upset. But that's not really why they're upset. They're upset because they're trying to do something. It feels hard. When something feels hard, how do you feel? You're not like skipping through it. You're kind of like, ugh, why did I make this choice? What am I doing? Why am I trying to do this? Right? We feel the same things as adults when we're faced with something quote unquote hard. So we could scaffold at that moment. So the child grows really frustrated. One is like we could say to ourselves, they can successfully zip themselves 90% of the time. I'm going to give this time and space. I'm not going to rush over and do anything. Two, you could walk over and go, I can get it started for you. Do you want me to help you with that? And they might go, sure. And then you can start it and then they might finish it. Three, you might offer just a different solution altogether and go, do you want to throw your coat down on the ground and see if you can flip it on over and then try again? Like just do a reset where they get to just try all over. There are a lot of different ways we can do this, but the idea is we're not stepping in to fix it. We're not taking the discomfort away. We're not taking the struggle away. We're actually letting them stretch. And it's in that stretching that we build resilience, right? It's like the same idea if you have siblings who fight all the time. And let's say there's one sibling that feels like they're the more dominant one, right? So maybe in some instances, we let the other sibling who might be a little more passive, a little more accommodating, we make sure they get to go first in the next game we're going to play. And we already know this is going to ruffle feathers for the child who wants to always be first. But we're doing this intentionally because we are stretching this child. They need to learn and understand this skill. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, amazing. This one's first. I'm second. You're third. and they're going to automatically not like it, which is fine because that's where they're at. We're meeting them where they're at, and they can grow really frustrated. And we're going to say, I get it. I know you love being first. It just doesn't work that way every time. So and so gets to be first. If you want to join us, you've got to calm down. And if you can't, that's okay. We're still going to play. But as soon as you're able to stay calm in your body, and I'm right here with you if you need me, you can come back and play. We have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable with this idea that perfect parenting does not mean you have happy kids all the time. Perfect parenting isn't just the idyllic moments where we envision our hand in hand walking down a road together or skipping through a park or walking on the beach. Yes, those moments are beautiful and we need those moments. There has to be balance. But really great parenting is when we can stretch our kids. I just had this happen with a client last week. Her child was struggling in school with listening and making some choices that she wasn't supposed to be making, and so on and so forth. And the parent really was struggling because the child was giving all these great reasons as to why she did what she did. And it wasn't that it wasn't true, it's that the child in that moment needed to still understand that she made a choice that we need to reconsider. She needed some form of a consequence. It didn't need to be an all or nothing consequence. But because that child was so good at explaining her way through things, a lot of times parents always try to justify why the behavior was happening. Oh, well, it was so and so, and this influence of this person, and that happened. But instead, because we can't really control the outside, we can't, as much as we think we can, we can't. What they needed to do was stretch her so that regardless of her environment, we still need her to make good choices. We still need her to make safe choices. So this was a safety concern. So now we stretch and we give the consequence. And the child was so upset. You're not listening to me. You're not hearing me, right? Saying all the things that pull at our heartstrings. And that parent had to stay really steady and go, no, I hear you and I believe you. But we still made an unsafe choice. Those two things can be real at the same time. You could have felt all the things and you have good reason why you made that choice. And I get that. But at the same time, we still have to really understand that we cannot make unsafe choices. And so in doing so, they ended up having the most beautiful weekend once this event passed. And in part, it's because they held their boundary. The child understood that even though there were all these other things in their environment, that they had the power to still make the right choice. And so that only happened because the parents really held their boundary and stood their ground in that way. So again, it wasn't about trying to convince the child that you're manipulating me, you're lying, you're not telling the truth. It wasn't about that. It doesn't even matter. Believe the child, that's fine. But the child still made an unsafe decision that still needs to be addressed and still needs to have a consequence, or a natural consequence, or a logical consequence. Kids will also learn to understand, especially as they get older, there will always be some temptation around you. There will always be something else around you that might encourage the wrong choice. And that's okay when you make that wrong choice. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we stretch. So I just want to pivot for a second. That's, in regarding kids, think about what you want to do with this is like, where can I help my kids stretch? And what is the skill? Like, so it could come across as like, do they struggle when you're not with them? So separation anxiety, how can we build a little space, a little more tolerance for that so that they can start to see that they're safe? It could be around social dynamics. It could be around skills like waiting. It could be frustration tolerance. It could be managing emotions when they get really upset and mad. And what's our response to that? So really finding your way through is always going to result in getting the child to really tolerate more and to build self-regulation skills and regulate those emotions in a way that feels so much more manageable, especially in the home setting. So now for you, the adult, and this comes up a lot with my life coaching clients, we want to think about where we feel comfortable. And I do this with myself too, you guys. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, it feels so scary. Believe me, I do it. I completely am there with you, but it's one of the best things you can do for yourself if your aim is to really continue to evolve and grow and expand and gain and really like allow yourself the process of like continuing to unfold and really embrace what it is to be of life, right? And to be in this moment and to continue to do different things and explore different opportunities. So often when we're stretching, the way we have to do this is like we have to choose one area where we feel pretty comfortable. So think of something that's like would feel really hard for you. So in some cases, like I did this with a life coaching client, we just started to set new boundaries with loved ones, and that was incredibly hard. So again, scaffolding is important. So I gave her scripts to use, so it didn't feel like a blunt no right out of the gate, but it gave her a little bit of time and space to think about how she wanted to really decide on whether or not she wanted to commit on certain things or not. So it just looked like instead of somebody saying, "Hey, can you come and help me with dot, dot, dot," where typically she would respond with yes, because her patterning, and this is a lot of what I do in life coaching, her patterning was that her value or her perceived value was so tethered to taking care of people and pleasing people and being accommodating. And she really relished in that. And she really formed an identity around that. And what started to happen is she became incredibly depleted. And the things that were giving her nourishment before, like when people would say, "You're so wonderful, you're so helpful, thank you so much," that no longer mattered anymore. She was just burnt out. She didn't really care. And she started to attract people in her life that weren't even really that grateful. And that will naturally happen, right? I always say, like, the takers find the givers. And so we always have to kind of be aware of that. So anyhow, what I said to her was, well, let's start here. Let's stretch a little. And next time someone sends you that message, I just want you to say, "I just need to check my calendar." Or, "Thank you for the ask. I will get back to you. I'm in the middle of something." She just needed a way to create some space from herself. So she was interrupting that automatic, immediate response of saying, "Sure, yeah, absolutely," and then wondering later, why did I say yes so quickly? So we were trying to disrupt that pattern, and it worked. So the minute she was giving these small pauses for herself by answering using the scripts that we provided in coaching, she then started to think about, "Well, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it?" A lot of times the answer was, "I don't really want to do it." So then through that, she would message me and go, "Okay, I know I don't want to do it. It's sitting with, I really thought through it. I listened to my body. I listened to my intuition. This is not a yes for me." We would think about, okay, how can we thoughtfully answer that then? You know, "I appreciate that you reached out. I'm unavailable to support you with this," or "I'm unavailable to help you," and period. Getting really comfortable with that. And so it took time, but with stretching, she got better and better and better at it. And she's in a completely different place in her life anymore. All those codependent relationships fell by the wayside. All the people who were the takers because she was the giver started to go away because they were all in her life for the wrong reasons. And then what also started to happen, which is I think something that scares a lot of people, is like, well, who will then be left in my life if that happens? It was filled with beautiful, beautiful new souls, new people, new friends, new opportunities, new experiences. But change is scary, and we have to lean into it one step at a time. So, hence the stretching. I recently did this myself. I was offered an opportunity to do something. It felt great. It seemed like it was in alignment. And then they quoted me a price in terms of what they would be paying me to do the project. And I knew it wasn't the price that I would agree to. And that's hard. It's hard to negotiate things like money. It's hard to say, "I'll do it for twice as much," and to just sit very comfortably in that space and to just hold that amount of integrity and power in your own truth and knowing, like, "I'm happy to support this project. I believe in it. And the time commitment will look like this for me. And so to do so, it would be this much." And to just leave it there and relinquish the fact that this could all fall apart. And that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. And I stretched, and I'm happy to report they completely matched. They didn't try to negotiate me down. They didn't try to talk me into something else or adding more onto it. This went back and forth a few times with me really being clear on like what it included. So transactions are hard sometimes. And if you're somebody who's self-employed or works for yourself, you know this. And if you're not, if you're just starting or if you're just starting to explore with this idea, it's interesting, but push yourself, stretch a little bit and see. It's really a belief in understanding your own value and your own resilience and really being okay with like, here's what I'm going to present. And if it doesn't work for you, that's also okay too. And so stretching for me is probably the one thing that's changed not just my life, but even the way I parented my kids, like understanding each of them had individual needs and they were both very different, and putting them in situations. My husband and I both would think about this all the time, like where and how can we get these kids to stretch a little bit? Like what do we need to be giving them? What opportunities do we need to be putting in front of them? What environments do we need to be placing them in? Even if they're kind of like, I don't really want to do that. It's like, okay, well, let's just try. And then using scaffolding. I'm not saying to completely like throw them in the water and ask them to swim, but scaffolding is a real critical part of it too. So I will leave it there, you guys. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here. If you guys want more information, you can head on over to theparentingreframe.com, or you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at theparentingreframe. If you guys ever wanted more information on life coaching itself, that's going to be more you-centered, not child-centered, you guys can certainly reach out to me via email, albiona at theparentingreframe.com. I work on helping you unblock what's keeping you stuck and really learn how to manage those patterns so that you can replace the patterns that aren't working with ones that are going to feel a lot more conducive with what you need. So, anyways, until next time, everyone, I will see you.